The sun was setting over the sprawling city of Chicago, casting an amber glow over the towering buildings that stood like silent giants against the evening sky. On the crowded street, a small, discarded doll lay on the ground, its arm twisted and its face smeared with dirt. It was a symbol of something broken, a silent witness to the chaos that had just occurred. Nearby, Sarah struggled to regain her footing, her blonde hair tangled, her lip split, and a bruise already spreading across her cheek. The pain in her body was nothing compared to the weight in her heart. Beside her, her young daughter, Lily, stood trembling. Her little hands clutched the damaged doll to her chest as if holding onto the last shred of her world. Her wide, tear-filled eyes darted between her mother and the road ahead. Sarah had tried so hard to keep everything together, but the world had other plans. Sarah was a young widow, just barely in her 30s, trying to hold on to the fragile thread of normalcy. Every day, she worked as a groundskeeper at a local park, barely earning enough to pay rent and buy enough food to keep herself and Lily going. Yet, despite the struggles, Sarah never complained. She always kept her promises to Lily. Every morning, before leaving for work, she would tie Lily's little yellow ribbons in her hair and whisper, "Someday things will get better." Lily, being only 5, believed every word her mother spoke, even when Sarah's voice trembled with the weight of unspoken fears. But that day, everything shattered. The world as they knew it broke in an instant. Sarah had discovered that the park manager and his staff had been underpaying her for months, taking advantage of her desperation. She had gathered the courage to confront him, her voice shaking as she demanded the wages she was owed. But instead of an apology, the manager and his men laughed in her face. They mocked her, belittled her. When Sarah pleaded for justice, one of the men shoved her harshly into the wall. That's when Lily had come running, holding her doll tightly and shouting for them to stop. One of the men, cold and heartless, ripped the doll from Lily's hands, tearing off its arm before tossing it to the dirt. As Lily stood frozen in shock, the men turned their backs and walked away, leaving Sarah bruised and her daughter crying in the streets. Sarah's body ached, her lip bleeding, but she fought to stay strong for Lily. Wiping the blood from her face, she whispered softly, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's fine," though her voice betrayed her. But Lily didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her eyes told the story of a child who had just witnessed something too cruel to comprehend. She stood there, clutching the broken toy, her tiny fingers trembling. Just then, a low rumble broke the silence. The sound of engines in the distance grew louder, almost shaking the ground beneath them. Lily, still holding the doll, turned her head, her eyes widening in surprise. 5 motorcycles, gleaming in the fading light, appeared at the end of the street. The bikers, dressed in black leather, rode toward them, their engines roaring like thunder, sending vibrations through the air. As the bikers slowed down, the leader, a rugged man with a thick beard and salt and pepper hair, cut the engine and dismounted. His piercing gaze met Sarah's, and without saying a word, he understood what had happened. The biker leader, whose vest read RL in bold letters, kneeled down to Lily's level, his eyes softening as he asked in a deep, gravelly voice, "Who did this?" With a trembling hand, Lily pointed down the road, toward the park where the men who had caused this pain had fled. The leader stood up, his expression hardening. Without hesitation, he turned to his fellow bikers. They exchanged a look, a wordless understanding between them. Then, one by one, the engines roared to life again. Sarah called out, "Wait, please don't," but it was too late. The bikers sped off, heading straight toward the park. As Sarah watched them leave, she couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. She never expected anyone to stand up for them, especially not a group of men who were known for their dangerous reputation. But perhaps, just maybe, fate had a different plan for them that day.
The roar of the motorcycles echoed through the streets, growing louder as they approached the gates of the park. Sarah, still holding Lily's hand, stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't believe what was happening. A group of bikers, notorious for their reputation, had come to their aid. The sounds of the engines filled the air, almost drowning out everything else. In the distance, the faint figure of the park manager could be seen, standing near the entrance, still unaware of what was about to unfold. As the bikers rolled into the park lot, the workers who had been there moments ago froze in place. Their faces, once filled with laughter and cruelty, now held confusion and fear. The leader of the group, Jack, dismounted his motorcycle first. His boots hit the concrete with a heavy thud that seemed to resonate through the air. He was a man who commanded respect, and his presence alone was enough to send a chill down the spine of anyone who dared cross him. The factory manager, trying to maintain some semblance of authority, stepped forward. He cleared his throat, straightening his posture, but his confidence quickly began to falter when he saw the fire in Jack's eyes. Jack's gaze was unwavering, and his expression spoke volumes. He was not there for a conversation, he was there for justice. Jack's voice, though low and calm, carried the weight of someone who had seen the worst of humanity. "You," he said, pointing directly at the manager. "You hurt an innocent woman and child today. That's something you won't walk away from." The air was thick with tension. Workers on the sidelines exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what was happening or what would come next. But the silence that followed was deafening, like the calm before a storm. The factory manager's face turned pale, his bravado slipping away as Jack took a step closer, his imposing figure casting a long shadow over the man. The manager stuttered, trying to regain control of the situation. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is private property. You can't just." Jack didn't let him finish. With a swift motion, he grabbed the manager by the collar and lifted him off the ground, his strength unmatched. The other bikers stood by, their eyes scanning the area, ensuring no one interfered. The sound of engines idling was a constant reminder that the bikers were in control now. "You don't get to talk down to people anymore," Jack growled, his voice laced with anger. "You don't get to take advantage of others just because you think you can. Not today. Not while I'm here." The manager's face contorted in fear as he gasped for air, his hands clutching Jack's arm in a futile attempt to break free. But Jack's grip was unrelenting. "You'll pay for what you've done," Jack said coldly, dropping the manager to the ground with a force that echoed through the empty lot. Behind Jack, the other bikers exchanged silent nods, their work done. They knew the message had been sent, loud and clear. No one would dare cross someone who had the courage to fight back. And in that moment, Sarah, standing on the sidelines with Lily, realized something that she hadn't in a long time: there were still people in the world who cared. The bikers turned and began to walk back toward their motorcycles, their mission complete. Sarah watched them, a mix of awe and gratitude filling her heart. She had never expected this kind of justice, but it had arrived nonetheless. The bikers, the rebel riders, had done something extraordinary that day. They had given her hope. As the bikers mounted their bikes and prepared to leave, the leader, Jack, looked back at Sarah and Lily one last time. He pulled something from his pocket, a small, new doll, its blue dress fluttering in the breeze. He walked over to Lily, who was still holding the broken toy in her arms, and gently placed the new doll into her hands. Lily looked up at Jack, her eyes still red from crying, but now filled with wonder. She clutched the new doll to her chest, her face softening as she whispered, "Thank you." Jack nodded, his eyes softening for a brief moment before he reached into his wallet and handed Sarah an envelope thick with bills. Sarah looked at him, confused and reluctant. "I can't accept this," she said, her voice trembling. Jack shook his head, his expression firm but kind. "You've been through enough. Take it. You deserve better." Before Sarah could protest any further, Jack and the bikers turned and mounted their motorcycles, revving their engines one last time. The sound of their departure was like a final echo of justice ringing through the empty lot. As they rode away, Sarah stood there, stunned, holding the envelope in one hand and the new doll in the other. For the first time in what felt like forever, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things would get better. The next morning, the city of Chicago was alive with its usual hum. The streets bustled with commuters, and the sun rose over the skyline, casting its warm glow over everything below. But for Sarah and Lily, this day felt different. There was a lightness in the air, a sense of change that hadn't been there before. For the first time in years, Sarah didn't feel the crushing weight of uncertainty. Her head was held high as she walked beside her daughter, Lily's new doll clutched tightly in her arms. The factory gates, which had been a symbol of Sarah's struggle, were eerily quiet. There was no sound of the usual bustle from the workers, no noise of machines running. It was as if the world had frozen, holding its breath. Sarah couldn't help but glance up at the gates, wondering if the manager would show his face again, but there was nothing. No one came. The streets outside the factory were empty, and the usual rush of activity was absent. It was a strange, unsettling silence, one that spoke volumes. As Sarah walked past the gates with Lily by her side, she saw a small crowd gathered near the entrance of the factory. Whispers filled the air, and she could make out words like resigned and gone. It seemed that the factory management had suddenly disappeared overnight. No one knew exactly what happened, but the workers who had once been so eager to hurt Sarah and Lily were now without a leader, left to wonder what had changed. The workers were left standing in the parking lot, unsure of what to do next. But Sarah didn't care to stick around. She had made her peace with the place long ago. As she continued walking with Lily, she felt a sense of freedom she hadn't known in years. The burden of the past had been lifted from her shoulders. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt that it might be something better. A feeling she hadn't experienced since she lost her husband. The next few days were a blur for Sarah. Word spread quickly that the factory was in disarray, that the managers had resigned, and that everything was uncertain. The workers were left to pick up the pieces, but Sarah didn't look back. She knew she couldn't change the past, but she could shape her future, and it was time to move on. Sarah began looking for new opportunities. With the little money Jack had given her, she was able to pay off a few debts, and she started to look for a better job, something where she wouldn't be taken advantage of, something that would allow her to provide a stable life for herself and Lily. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, rejections, and moments of doubt, but Sarah pushed through them, fueled by the memory of the biker's kindness and the determination to give Lily the life she deserved. One day, while Sarah was walking home from a job interview, she received a call. It was a company she had applied to weeks ago, a small landscaping business that had recently expanded. They were offering her a position as a manager, with a salary that was far higher than what she had earned at the factory. It wasn't much, but it was a start. It was enough to give her hope that she could build something new, something better. When Sarah told Lily the news, her little face lit up with excitement. "Mommy, we're going to be okay, aren't we?" she asked, her innocent eyes full of hope. Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with love for her daughter. "Yes, sweetie. We're going to be okay. We're going to be better than okay. We're going to start fresh." As they walked back to their apartment, hand in hand, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had come so far in such a short time, and though the road ahead wouldn't be easy, she was ready for it. They were ready for it. That night, as Sarah tucked Lily into bed, she couldn't help but think of Jack and the bikers. She didn't know who they were, or why they had helped her, but their kindness had changed everything for her. They had given her more than just money or a new toy for Lily, they had given her hope. And that, more than anything, was what she needed. She kissed Lily on the forehead and whispered, "Good night, baby. Tomorrow is a new day." As Sarah stood in the doorway, watching her daughter drift off to sleep, she couldn't help but feel that, just maybe, the world wasn't such a bad place after all. There was kindness in it, even in the most unexpected places. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to keep going. Weeks passed, and life for Sarah and Lily began to settle into a rhythm. The new job at the landscaping company was a relief, though it was hard work. Every day, Sarah woke early, donned her work boots, and headed out to tend to the gardens and green spaces she was now responsible for. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and it paid well enough to give them a comfortable life. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt like she could breathe again. Lily, too, seemed to be thriving. She was excelling in school, making new friends, and her smile returned more often than it had in years. The new doll, the one given to her by the biker leader, had become her most prized possession. It wasn't just a doll, it was a symbol of their fresh start, a reminder that they were no longer victims of their circumstances. One chilly afternoon, as Sarah was finishing up work, she noticed a figure standing by the entrance to the garden. At first, she didn't recognize the person, but as she walked closer, her heart skipped a beat. It was Jack, the leader of the bikers. His weathered face was as stern as ever, but there was a softness in his eyes that made her feel like she was seeing a different side of him. "Jack?" Sarah asked cautiously, her voice trembling slightly. "What are you doing here?" Jack's eyes softened as he took in the sight of her. "I thought I'd check in on you. Make sure things were going well." He hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "You've been through a lot, Sarah. I just wanted to make sure you're all right." Sarah was taken aback. She hadn't expected to see him again, let alone for him to come searching for her. "I'm fine," she said, her voice steady, but there was a part of her that appreciated the gesture. "Better than I've been in a long time, actually." Jack nodded, his gaze flickering to the small garden that Sarah had been working on. "You've got something good here. It's not much, but it's yours. And that counts for something." "I guess it does," Sarah replied with a small smile. "Thank you, again, for everything. You didn't have to do what you did." I don't know how to thank you." Jack waved her words away, his usual gruff demeanor returning. "Don't need to thank me. I did what anyone would have done." But Sarah could tell that there was more to it. She could see the care in his eyes, something that didn't match the rough exterior of the biker he appeared to be. She took a deep breath, her heart swelling with gratitude. "You changed our lives. You gave me something I didn't even know I had left, hope." Jack shifted uncomfortably, as if her words had caught him off guard. "Sometimes hope is all we've got," he said quietly, his voice laced with a hint of vulnerability. Just then, Lily came running down the path, her face lighting up when she saw Jack. "Mommy! Look, it's the man with the doll," she exclaimed, her little feet pattering against the ground. Sarah chuckled, her heart warming at the sight of her daughter. "Yes, Lily, it's Jack." Lily ran up to him and, without hesitation, wrapped her arms around his legs. "Thank you for my doll," she said simply, her voice sincere. Jack's expression softened, and he awkwardly patted her on the head. "You're welcome, kiddo," he said, though it was clear that he wasn't used to such affection. "It's the least I could do." Sarah watched the exchange in silence, a deep sense of appreciation filling her. This man, who had once seemed like nothing more than a rough biker, had become an unlikely hero in their lives. But what struck her the most was the way Jack had opened himself up, offering kindness in a world that had shown him little of it. "I never expected any of this," Sarah said after a moment, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've made such a difference." Jack looked at her, his gaze steady and unwavering. "You don't need to expect anything from anyone. Sometimes the right people just show up when you need them the most." They stood there for a moment, the quiet of the garden surrounding them. The air was cool, but there was warmth in the connection they shared, a quiet understanding that spoke volumes. As the sun began to set, casting its golden light across the horizon, Jack gave Sarah a nod, signaling that it was time for him to leave. "Take care of yourself," he said, his voice gruff again but with an undertone of something deeper. "And remember, there's always a way forward, even when it doesn't seem like there is." Sarah watched as Jack walked back to his motorcycle, the same Harley he had ridden on that fateful day. He revved the engine, and with a final glance over his shoulder, he disappeared down the road, his figure fading into the distance. As Sarah turned back to Lily, who was still clutching her doll, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. Life wasn't perfect, and there would still be challenges ahead, but she had something she hadn't had before, a sense of belonging, a community that cared, and the unwavering belief that no matter how hard things got, she and Lily would always have each other. With the evening sky turning shades of orange and pink, Sarah wrapped an arm around Lily and whispered, "We're going to be just fine." The days after Jack's unexpected visit were some of the quietest Sarah had ever known. Life in the city, despite the hustle and bustle, seemed to slow down for her, as if the universe was giving her a moment to breathe. Her new job was settling into a comfortable routine. She woke up early, went to work, and returned home in the late afternoon. The world outside was filled with noise, but for Sarah and Lily, the peace they had found in their little corner of the world was enough. But Sarah knew that the peace she had found wasn't just about escaping the chaos, it was about creating something new, something lasting. The small garden outside their apartment, which she had carefully cultivated with her own hands, became a symbol of their resilience. It was a place of growth, not just for the flowers and plants, but for her own sense of self-worth and hope for the future. One crisp morning, as Sarah was tending to the flowers, Lily ran up to her, excitement radiating from her every step. "Mommy, guess what?" Lily said, her eyes wide. "The principal called. He said I can be in the school play. They need me to help with the costumes." Sarah paused, wiping the dirt from her hands, and smiled at her daughter. "That's amazing, sweetie. I'm so proud of you." Lily bounced on her toes, her energy contagious. "I'm going to be a fairy. And I get to wear sparkly wings. Do you think I'll look pretty?" "You'll look beautiful," Sarah replied, her heart swelling with love. For the first time in a long while, she felt a deep sense of pride. Lily's joy was her own. This was their new life, one filled with hope and possibilities. That afternoon, Sarah went to pick up Lily from school. As they walked home together, hand in hand, Sarah couldn't help but think of everything they had been through, everything they had lost and gained. The factory had taken so much from them, but it had also given them a new perspective on what mattered most: love, resilience, and the strength to move forward, no matter the obstacles. When they reached their apartment, Sarah was surprised to find a letter waiting for her. It was an official-looking envelope, the kind that made her stomach twist with nervousness. She tore it open, her eyes scanning the contents. To her astonishment, the letter was an offer from the landscaping company where she worked. They had noticed her hard work, her dedication, and her ability to manage the garden spaces with such care. They wanted to promote her to a full-time position as a supervisor, with a substantial raise and more responsibilities. It was a recognition she hadn't expected, but one that made her heart race with excitement. "Mommy, what's that?" Lily asked, peeking over her shoulder. Sarah smiled, her eyes shining. "It's a new beginning, Lily. We're going to keep moving forward, and this is just the start." The next day, Sarah walked into work with a renewed sense of purpose. The promotion felt like more than just a job offer, it felt like the universe was giving her another chance. She took on her new responsibilities with enthusiasm, carefully overseeing the maintenance of the park's gardens, ensuring everything flourished under her care. She had become the one people relied on, the one they came to for advice and guidance. Her co-workers began to see her in a new light. Sarah, the quiet woman who had once been overwhelmed by life's challenges, was now a leader in her own right. And with that new role, she felt a sense of pride she had never known before. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. One evening, as Sarah and Lily sat together in the small garden she had nurtured, Sarah felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see her neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Keller, smiling at her. "You've done a beautiful job here," Mrs. Keller said, admiring the garden. "It's a testament to you, to your strength and perseverance." Sarah smiled back, feeling the weight of the woman's words. "Thank you. It's been a journey, but it's worth it." As Sarah sat with Lily, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange, she realized that they had finally found peace. They had gone through so much to get to this point, but they had made it. And though the future was still uncertain, Sarah knew that with each passing day, they were building something stronger, something that couldn't be broken. The world, with all its chaos and challenges, had tried to take everything from Sarah. But it hadn't succeeded. Because she had something that no one could ever take away, the love she had for her daughter, the strength to keep going, and the unwavering belief that no matter how dark the road ahead seemed, she could face it, head held high, heart full, and ready for whatever came next.